So as Sherry said, I'm a third generation farmer. I got kicked out of the family farm, so it wasn't because I was wearing suits around the farm or anything like that. It was, the farm wasn't big enough, so I sort of went and found my own way, which has led me to standing in front of you today. Just a little bit about the farm in Oxford. So we've got 1,650 acres, 668 hectares. We've been farming in Oxfordshire since 2001. We have 100 suckler cows, and that is right, it's 100. I haven't missed 3 or 4 zeros off the end of that. It's 100. 3 Aberdeen Angus bulls, 1,200 breeding ewes, 2,000 laying hens, 300 acres of arable land. Also got 300 acres of permanent pasture that sits on the River Thames floodplain. We're just tenant farmers, so we don't own the farm there. So Oxford University owns the farm. We've got a long-term farm business tenancy agreement with them to run the farm. When we set FAI up, and I say we, I wasn't there, but I've been with the business 10 years now. It was set up with the vision of really, I suppose, trying to find out what is sustainable farming. Welfare was a big concern for the consumer at that time. So it was really looking about how we can, we've all heard the word science a lot, but the difficulty is that pull through from science into practical commercial farming, and that's where we stand, is in that middle ground. So we pull some of the research, some of the science, and see whether it stands and falls in a commercial environment. We coin sustainability along with the same as McDonald's, is the 3 E's. Economically viable is one of, obviously everybody's pretty keen to talk about that one. Out of those 3 E's, that's the one that trips us up quicker than anything. If I start chopping trees down or doing things to my pastures, we're talking a few years down the line. I don't make money for 12 months. That's quite damaging to my business. And that I suppose, for us, and that's why it's always front and centre for farming, because it's the thing that will trip us up quicker than anything else. One of the, I suppose, statements that we came up very early on is animals fit for their environment and the environment fit for the animals. And I think that's as relevant today as it was 15 years ago. Business basics. So the UK is still within the European Union. Next 2.5 years we won't be. But there is a massive amount of regulation that we have. So we have environmental legislation, so there's regulations cover watercourses, natural habitats, biodiversity. We've got the Common Agricultural Policy, so there's all the requirements associated with that. Under ethics, a massive amount of legislation and regulation on animal welfare. Also covers worker welfare as well, so we've got all that to contend with. Economics, that there is a cost associated with that. That there is no doubt it costs money to implement all of those requirements, and I suppose the flip side to that, that's why we get paid subsidies. It's sort of a carrot and stick situation. The carrot is we give you subsidies, and the payback is we have to do all that. The picture there is, you'll see the farm building sort of close to the centre near the top. That was 9 years ago in the middle of summer. That's the River Thames, you can just see it there. That flooded in the middle of summer. Pretty unusual for us. We're used to it flooding during the winter. These are some of the challenges that we've got. We all have different challenges, but that's why we can't plant cereals or anything else. That's why grass works in this area. We'd have had cereals on that, it would have ruined it. If we plough that area up, and it does that in winter, which it does 9 years out of 10, all it does is we'll lift our topsoil up and it will dump it down in London. I can't farm that if I've got no topsoil, so it has to be pasture. Genetics. So with our salers, we're looking for good mothering ability, easy calving. So some of the figures, we're looking, with our 100 cows, that I don't want to be intervening in more than one of those calvings. No cesareans. The benefit of the saler is their gestation period is slightly shorter than, I suppose, other bovines. Wide pelvic girdle, so they calve very easily. So my guys aren't wandering around sheds at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning trying to pull great big 70-kilo calves out of cows. Polled genetics, so that's again one of the aims. Is all of the bulls are polled, mums are polled as well. So again, it's reducing the need to cut or chop something off these animals. And as soon as you start cutting and chopping things off, we're into anaesthetics and we're into analgesias. Analgesia for a calf, probably in the UK, you're probably talking about £5, £5.50. So you're looking at $8, $9 for that. So you can start seeing the costs of implementing some of the welfare things that we're being expected to do. Improved temperament. It's one of the challenges with good mothering ability. You can have some challenges with the temperament. So we're after, once they've settled down a bit, easy handling. We've got quite a system where the animals will come in, they'll be housed over winter. So there's a lot of interaction with staff. So, we've got to be able to go in there without animals disappearing over 6-foot walls and trampling the staff. Hybrid vigour is another one. So we've got the Angus, obviously crossing with the Salur. We can knock 2 to 3 months off of our finishing time by doing that. Cow longevity. So we're all selecting, listening to the guys on the ranch, so we're all selecting for very similar things. I want a cow that is good on her feet, good legs, good udder, with all those attributes. But, and if I can get it right, we haven't got a particularly harsh environment in Oxford. We certainly don't get to 40 degrees, and we don't get to minus 40 neither. We're somewhere in the middle and slightly wet. So we've got the ability to do that. And our genetics have to be suitable for a pasture-based system. Herd health. So we've got a very detailed veterinary health program. So that the aim is prevention over cure. So we've got a full vaccination program. We also blood tests. So we know the BVD, Yoni's free. We've got good biosecurity. So we don't have any nose-to-nose contact with any other livestock. Although we got TB 3 years ago, and there's one species that we got that from, which is the badger, which we can't do anything about because they're protected. We're clear now of TB, but we know we'll break down again at some point in the future because that contact with the cattle. The reduce, replace, refine is really, I suppose, our antibiotics policy. So we use a policy if something is sick, we treat it. I definitely don't agree. And if there's anybody sitting here that has a program of no antibiotics, it is flawed and it's wrong. Because the reason you're doing it and the reason antibiotics has come to the forefront is because of resistance. And by banning something and having a very simple message of we don't use antibiotics in our supply chain is flawed. Because if we don't deal with it as an industry, resistance doesn't matter whether I've made a commitment in my supply chain not to have it. If I go into hospital, get a pretty basic infection, doesn't mean that I'm not going to die from that infection because my policy was not to source beef that's been treated with antibiotics. So there's a lot of things that we need to do and work together on. Rotational grazing, I'm speeding up. So implemented that this year. We've got generally fixed stocking. We'll put a load of cattle in field for 3 or 4 weeks, but now we've introduced a rotational grazing system with the aim of hopefully improving daily live weight gains, improving forage utilisation, decreasing selective grazing, all of the benefits that we know. We've got an awful lot of data about that hopefully we can crunch next year and have some more information on that. We're doing a massive amount of fencing, as you'll have seen. We've got the Thames that runs through. Usual policy is cattle go down, drink from the Thames, damage the bank, and it's not, we haven't really got sort of riparian areas like you guys have here. But when we damage the bank, you start getting erosion. When that Thames floods, you start getting quite excessive sort of bank erosion, and that starts impacting on the fields. So by reducing cattle access has quite a profound impact on that. Obviously the flip side to that is we've got to get water to cattle then. So that is what they call a pasture pump. So there is literally a pipe, you put that in the Thames, goes to the back of that, and then the cattle, as they go to drink, they push that goldy yellow thing back and it pumps the water into the trough. Very, very simple system, very simple. So is our system sustainable? So we're utilising land. It's only suitable to grow grass, so there's only a few things that can convert that into human edible protein, and that's ruminants. So we've got high health, high welfare, limiting antibiotic use. It's a low input system, so limiting cereals. We've excluded soy from the diet for the last 3-4 years. Improving stock and pasture performance, protecting natural resources. Flip side to that is obviously we've got a large carbon footprint associated with our system because we can't take into the carbon sequestration of our grassland. And that's something obviously Canada's going to be quite interested in, in the next sort of few years as to whether you guys can figure that one out. Economic benefit to our system is pretty small. But does this start becoming our social license? Does this become our social license to farm? All of the things that we talk about, is that the norm? Is that what the consumer expects us to do? So very, very, very quickly, so barriers to change. It was just making clear that I suppose the farmers, ranchers, whatever you want to call us, that are here, are probably the top 5-10% of that supply chain. We've got to think there's 90% that aren't here. They would probably have a very different conversation with you guys if they were here. And there are massive barriers to change out there. Even our rotational paddock grazing system that we put in, there was a capital investment, there was a staff resource. It's a completely different management system to how we're running the rest of our cattle. So there's all of that knowledge. And sometimes it's easier not to do something, or say I'll do it next year or do it the year after. And the pace of change. That again, we're dealing with biological systems. This is not tweaking something on a factory line and getting an instant result. Some of these things take 6-12 months. And it's only at the end of that whether we've realised that it's worked or not. There's trade-offs. There's still emerging challenges. All of those, climate change. We're getting warmer and wetter in the UK. You see that picture of us 9 years ago in summer. Is that the challenge that we're going to have to deal with going forward? And the last 2 points I feel are key is sustainability is a mindset. It's not a destination. It's not a journey. Every journey I've gone on, there's a destination and there's an end point. With sustainability, there isn't. There is no end point to sustainability. It's about evolution. It's about changing. And that's the key, is the psychology of change, is how we can engage with a very traditional sector, certainly the beef sector is, how we can engage them to change practices.